Hi, I'm Mark Stevens. Today is the 31st of May, 2020. I'm in Santa Cruz, California in my home. We're still largely sheltering in place here. And about a week ago, I had the idea of making this video to offer breathing practices. So much of yoga is asana, is the postural practice. Thank goodness for the postural practices, making our body minds so much healthier. The pranayama practices, I find, go even further in helping us to become clear in our hearts, clear in our minds, stronger in our body minds overall. And yet it's unfortunate that these practices are often just simply not taught in yoga classes, workshops, and trainings. Or we skim the surface and we're often told that these practices are dangerously delicate in such ways that you really need the direct guidance of a yoga master or guru. I think that some of the practices can be challenging, but I also think that most everyone can do them. And there are certainly contraindications, which when we get into the practices, I will address. But before we get there, I need to say something else, which is that it seems a little kind of weird to be suggesting, guiding people through a breathing practice when there are many people who simply can't breathe, not so much due to the coronavirus or asthma or respiratory health, but due to social forces called racism and institutional racism. And we presently see in the United States our cities convulsed with violence as people in absolutely desperate conditions and sick and tired of 400 years of these kinds of experiences expressing their anger. I'm not in favor of violence ever. And at the same time, I think that if we want to understand acts of desperation, we understand the desperate conditions of people's lives that give rise to those acts of desperation. So again, it's sort of a white privilege in many ways. If you look across the landscape of yoga, that we have this gift of yoga so shared all across the world today. I'd like to be able to make these practices available to everyone in every way. I'm going ahead with you offering this video on how to do these practices, and I encourage you, if you find them valuable, useful to you, beneficial to you, to share them in every way that you might, such that we can all hopefully breathe better or breathe at all. In doing pranayama, just getting right then to the breathing practices, I appreciate that breathing practices, again, are often not taught because they're considered risky, and there are contraindications. I will highlight those as we move along, and also give you a lot of techniques for having a healthy, sustainable pranayama practice. With this, I'd like to suggest that you consider props. I'm sitting on a cushion. I don't necessarily need to. I can sit up tall without it. It's simply more comfortable with it. You could also consider, if your knees are up higher than your hips, or if you're slumping and can't help it, definitely sit up on a bolster or a stack of blocks or something else. And part of the practice, I'll be inviting you to sit in this position in which the ankles and the shins can be stretched or pressured in a way that doesn't feel good. So you might dangle your ankles over the edge of the blanket, elevating your shins, in which case definitely have a block there, such that you're able to sit grounded, rooted there, and get your pelvis level, your hips level and neutral. If you don't feel, sense that you need any such props, then put them aside. And now I invite you to come back to sitting in a simple, comfortable, cross-leg sitting position. If it's not comfortable, try to find a different way to sit. And for sure, indeed, if you wish, you could lie down, propped up, your chest more open. That is the traditional way, certainly in the Iyengar world, of teaching pranayama. Very effective for helping to really feel what's happening and to allow the lungs to operate, to function more fully. That said, we are in our waking life mostly upright, and thus I think is also very, 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 very valuable, helpful to do pranayama practices upright, sitting comfortably tall. And then you might consider having your eyes resting lightly closed. I like to do my pranayama practices, which I do every morning, with my eyes mostly open, allowing a sense of being more connected to the whole of it all, rather than restricting my senses, pratyahara practice, as Patanjali called it. So then, sitting as comfortably tall as you can. Play for a moment with moving your hips, your pelvis forward and back a bit, to feel where your weight comes, to try to find where your weight is more at the front of your sitting bones. And as you get to that point, that place, try to actively ground down through your sitting bones in the sense of growing your roots. And as you do, you might find you more naturally sit tall. As you do, play with moving your torso, your pelvis, your spine more forward and back to find where it feels it's in its natural positioning. Your shoulders relax down your back, and then your head, play with moving it to where it feels like it's just sort of floating there on top of your spine. And then, again, either focus your gaze or let your eyes rest lightly closed. And we begin with natural breathing. That might sound weird. Natural breathing. Aren't we all naturally breathing? I'll suggest, kind of. But what happens along the path of life in our experiences of everything is we tend to have emotional, mental, and physical conditions that come to affect the breath, to constrict the breath, to limit the breath. And so the first step in these practices is to kind of get out of the way, especially in that emotional, mental realm, in such a way that we just allow the breath to more naturally flow in and more naturally flow out. So just for a moment now, with either your eyes resting lightly closed or your gaze focused, just be with the breath. Just let it be. And here it is, and here we are. The breath flows in, the breath flows out. And as you sense it flowing in and flowing out, just notice if there's anything that you're doing that kind of gets in the way, anything that inhibits the natural flow of the breath in and out. And in all of these practices, try to breathe as best you can, only through your nose. If you can't really breathe well through your nose, then breathe through your mouth a bit. You might consider, if you have difficulty generally breathing through your nose, using a neti pot to do nasal irrigation of a light saline solution, helping to open up the nasal passages. Then, again, just letting the breath naturally as can be flow in and flow out. Just notice it. And notice if there's any place along the way where it tends to sort of get stuck or to rush or in any other way be disturbed. The breath flows in, and you might notice there's just a little moment there before it flows out, that natural little moment, that suspension there. Just see if you can allow that to happen. And then the breath flows out, and empty your breath before it comes back in. There's a little moment of nothingness there, if you will. See if you can allow that to happen. So we're already then moving beyond natural breathing by consciously doing something that is allowing the breath to flow in more consciously, allowing the breath out more consciously, and the natural pauses between the breaths. Now then, notice how your body's moving with the breath. How with inhalations, with the breath flowing in, puraka, the ancients called it, everything expands. Allow that as simply, naturally as you might. And then the breath flows out. Everything tends to settle in jhata center. So if you can allow that to happen as naturally as can be. And as you're in here doing with this now, stay with it for just a bit more and notice how the breath flows in and out of those natural pauses filled with breath and empty your breath. See if you can allow it to be as simple as can be. Now, as you stay with it, just for a moment, opening your mouth and breathing as though fogging up a mirror or glass, like do this with both the inhalation and the exhalation. For several more cycles of breath, getting more feel of the breath in your throat and that sound like a whisper or wind breezing through the trees, sound like the sea, sound of a seashell to your ear. And as you're there then with that sound, that sensation of the breath in your throat, try to maintain just that sound and sensation of the breath in your throat, but now with your mouth closed. This basic yogic breathing, Ujjayi Pranayama. Begin now with Ujjayi to use that sound, that sensation, to even more allow the breath to be as smooth, as steady as can be. Notice the breath, the pace, the duration of the breath, the texture of the breath. Try to allow it to be smooth and steady as can be. You might find that sound of Ujjayi soothes your nerves. Now we explore vritti practices, shama vritti and vishama vritti, simply meaning equal and unequal fluctuation. Just now, as you're with the Ujjayi breathing, notice the pace of the breath. So you might give it a count of 3 or 4 or 5, just notice whatever it is. And try to make the inhalations and exhalations the same, shama vritti. All the while, there's a sort of multitasking here, yes? So the breath is flowing in. We're consciously now allowing the ribs to spread evenly out, consciously allowing and we going with the natural expansion outward, upwards, every breath in taller yet. And try to maintain that spaciousness. As the breath is flowing out, ease it out slowly and completely. Every breath out, empty a breath, allow that natural pause to happen, and the breath simply flows back in. Making the inhalations and exhalations as much alike as you comfortably can. And now, explore stretching your inhalation a little bit longer, just by a count of 1 or 2. And notice in stretching the inhalation a bit longer, if it causes any disturbance, if it causes the breath to rush or introduces anything else that's not smooth and steady and natural feeling. So we're looking for a condition, those of you yoga teachers especially might think of as Sthira Sukham Pranayama, borrowing from the Yoga Sutra Patanjali on asana, where really all Patanjali tells us is what posture is. Be steady and at ease. And so here, be steady and at ease. And as you are, as steady and at ease as can be, bring your inhalation back down to match your exhalation for a few cycles of breath. And notice as you're doing this, any tension to your eyes, to your face, in your heart, in your throat. If there's tension there, come back to reflecting even more on the breath. Is there anything that you're doing that's causing that? Back off a bit. And then, that is, smooth it out a bit more. And then begin to explore stretching your exhalation more than the inhalation. So lengthen it by a count of 1 or 2, but only so much as it doesn't cause the breath to rush back in. Inhalation's natural pause. Exhalation's lengthen exhalation, natural pause, the breath flows back in. Inhalation's expansive, largely stimulating. Exhalations calming, centering, grounding. Indeed now, with those exhalations lengthening them a bit more, only so much as it doesn't disturb anything. Begin to bring your inhalation to match that comfortable, sustainable, lengthened exhalation. So you're breathing all together more deeply, yet back to balanced breathing. So it's shama vritti, equal fluctuation, but all together breathing more deeply, only so much as there's no disturbance. That Ujjayi quality is still there. And now we'll explore introducing a pause that's not natural. Viloma means against anti-hair, going against the grain. That is, now exhale the breath out all the way. Bring the breath in just halfway, and going against the grain, hold it right there. And now resume the inhalation, fill in your lungs. Natural pause. And exhale the breath out halfway, and again hold just there. Soft eyes, soft mouth, your tongue resting on your palate. Exhale the breath out all the way. Empty your breath, natural pause, and draw the breath in halfway. Holding. Slowly fill your lungs. Expanding. Ease the breath out halfway. Everything drawing to center. Hold the breath only as lightly as can be, only as strongly as it takes to keep it there. And now resume the exhalation. Belly drawing towards center. A little more active rooting, natural pause, and again halfway in. Continue in this way for several more cycles of breath. And if you find this pace of where the breath is moving and where you're holding the breath to be too much, back off. I was guiding you with a count of about 3, where the breath is moving and where you're holding it. Too much, go to a count of 2 or 1. Easy, expand to counts of 4 or 5. When that becomes comfortable, Sthira Sukham Pranayama, add a second pause, starting with movements of 3 and pauses of 3. Counts, that is. So you might then exhaling the breath out all the way, draw the breath in 1/3 of the way, and hold it there. Another 1/3 of the way in. Slowly fill your lungs. And out 1/3 of the way. Or halfway, please consider only the 1 pause. Now continue along in this way again for a bit longer. And with practice, explore taking it to where you have maybe, a 3rd pause, a 4th pause, eventually a 5th pause. It maybe take 10 years, literally, to get to there where you're taking, where the breath is moving for counts of 5, holding for counts of 5 without disturbance. Any disturbance, back off. Take it easy. There's no rush. And as you stay in it, notice how you're feeling. Notice your heart. Notice your mind, what you're thinking. Just keep coming back to the breath. Yes, the mind thinks. Rather than trying to stop it, just let it be. And by focusing more on the breath, you might find the mind tends to settle around it and through it. And as you stay in this, just appreciating that this practice helps us develop the neuromuscular functioning of our diaphragm, the primary muscle of respiration. It's like an umbrella, like a balloon right here. It also helps us in conditioning our intercostal muscles, the secondary respiratory muscles. All of our yoga practices, twists, forebends, backbends, all of these practices through here helping to refine that neuromuscular functioning. And here, we cultivate it even more and get more of the fruits of those practices. Now, when you next complete an exhalation, come back to simple Ujjayi breathing with no pauses. Notice how you feel. If there's tension in your knees or anywhere along the way in these practices, stretch out, shake out, whatever it happens to be, to stay as comfortable as can be. And now exploring retention of the breath in and out, Kumbhaka practices. Kumbhaka meaning to suspend the movement of the breath when filled with breath and when empty of breath. So now draw in a simple Ujjayi breath, everything expanding. Ease the breath out all the way, natural pause, empty of breath. And then you can ease the breath in, evenly filling out through your body like a jug filling with water. And when filled with breath, now hold the breath. Kumbhaka, Antara Kumbhaka, holding the breath in when filled with breath. Now release the breath slowly, completely out. Feel your belly gathering in a bit as you do. Empty your breath, hold the breath out. Baya Kumbhaka. And ease the breath back in slowly, fully fill in your lungs. Fill with breath, hold the breath in. Any tension, don't hold so long. And now ease the breath out. And only hold the breath out so long as it doesn't cause disturbance. It doesn't rush in. You don't feel any tension anywhere in any way. Stay in just this practice now. For several more cycles of breath, begin to play with how long you hold the breath. Notice again with those exhalations how everything draws to center as your belly engages. If you can connect that sensation with more actively rooting through your sitting bones, and with that also a light lifting of the floor of your pelvis, the space between your sit bones, a Mula Bandha practice. Try to sustain that light lift without bearing down, without squeezing your glutes or getting tension through your inner thighs. And as you stay with it, breathing consciously, staying with the steady Ujjayi quality of the breath when the breath is moving, all the while calm, relaxed as can be. And now, as you stay with it, when you next draw the breath in, hold the breath in. And ease the breath out slowly and completely. And empty your breath unless pregnant. Hold the breath out and kind of pull, suck your belly in and up as though into your heart. Uddiyana Bandha. Relax your belly completely. And only then resume the inhalation. Slowly back in. Fill in your lungs. Hold the breath in. And explore bringing your chin very slightly forward, very slightly down, and sort of in a little bit without creating any tension in your throat. Jalandhara Bandha, since it's sealing energy from the floor of your pelvis to your throat, and ease the breath slowly, completely out. And again, empty your breath, holding the breath out with that pulling the belly in and up, Uddiyana Bandha. Relax your belly. Slowly fill your lungs. Hold the breath in. Allow it to feel good. If it doesn't, change the way you're doing it. Back off. Take it easy. Ease the breath slowly and completely out. Empty your breath. Hold the breath out only so long as it's comfortable to you. Belly in and up. Uddiyana Bandha. And then again, relax your belly all the way. And only then resume the inhalation. And again, fill with breath. Hold it. Now bring in more breath. Bring in more breath. Ease it slowly and completely out. Everything settling, calming, empty your breath, hold the breath out. Vayu Kumbhaka with Uddiyana Bandha. Let go of your belly. Continue in this way a bit more on your own. And slow, taking your time, being with it. When you next complete an exhalation, just come back to simple, natural breathing. No Ujjayi, just let it be in it. Notice how you're feeling. If you're feeling tension in any way at all, consider taking a moment, pause the video and lie onto your back for a moment. Just kind of let it all soak in, all your nerves settle down, relax, and just be in it before coming back to join with the next practice of pranayama. And in this next practice, we'll look to explore Kapalabhati pranayama, skull cleansing, skull lightening pranayama. If you're pregnant, don't do it. If you're prone to tension, hypertension, hyperanxiety, don't do it. Unregulated high blood pressure, don't do it. Take it easy. Talk to your doctor, your advisors, your friends, your family, whomever it is that guides you in your health practices. Take it easy. Otherwise, now I invite you to play with sitting on your shins, Virasana, Vajrasana, for those of you who know those words, hero pose, thunderbolt pose. You might put aside one bolster. You might play with sitting on the cushion in this way. You could also play with a blanket folded like so. You could place that like so and then sit on it in this way, like this. A little more comfortable perhaps. Play with slumping and moving back and forth. Get your weight more to the front of your sit bones. If there's still pressure in your knees, double up on your bolster. If you're still slumping, double up on your bolster. Sit up on 3 blocks, whatever it takes. And if this doesn't work for you at all, then don't sit like this. You might play with manually spiraling your thighs inwardly, medial rotation, to more easily get your pelvis to rotate forward, to get your weight again to the front of your sitting bones. And as you actively root them and sit grounded and tall and spacious, with your shoulders relaxed down your back, steady as can be, with your hands simply relaxed down onto your thighs, you're level-headed as can be, and come back to Ujjayi breathing. In Kapalabhati pranayama, we sort of release the breath out with short, sharp blasts through the nostrils. The inhalations essentially take care of themselves. No need to even really pay attention to that. Just out, out, out. The belly will be pumping. Your diaphragm will be working like crazy, conditioning, strengthening your diaphragmatic source of breath. Now then, exhale the breath out all the way. Draw the breath in fully. And easing the breath out, try to maintain the spaciousness through your body-mind. And empty your breath. Now here, draw the breath in halfway, and then repeatedly blast it out through your nostrils, like keep it going. And with this technique, try to create the sound and the sensation more in your nostrils, not your throat, and keep it going. And as you do, keep it going, explore gradually intensifying it only so much as you're steady and at ease. And exhale the breath out all the way. calming, settling. Take a few cycles of Ujjayi, sort of resetting with Ujjayi. Now, second of 3 rounds of Kapalabhati. Oh, if there's tension in your knees before the next round, consider coming to all fours for a moment, extending one leg back behind you, kind of pumping through that heel to get pressure away from the knee on one side and the other before coming back to simply sitting between your heels, shoulders down your back. And here we are. Take a few cycles of Ujjayi to reset. And then now, draw the breath in halfway and begin as you begin. The second of 3 rounds. Mula Bandha, Jalandhar Bandha. And exhale the breath out all the way. And just let it be. Smooth, simple breathing for a few cycles of breath. You can always pause the video, stretch out your legs, your knees. On this third round, consider keeping your hands here, your arms down, that is, for about the same experience you had, perhaps a little bit more strongly this time, or take it easy. Or to greatly intensify it, release your arms down, draw your fingers in like you're hitchhiking with both thumbs drawing back like so. And on this one, we'll go for about a half minute or so. Over time, develop the capacity to go for about 5 minutes. I suggest years of practice. As that is, across the span of those 30 seconds or that minute or those 5 minutes, we slowly raise the arms and we slowly raise our gaze with the hands, eventually looking overhead to our thumbs. We start either here or here. Please draw a deep breath in. Exhale the breath out all the way, rooting, grounded, spacious as can be, gazing towards your knees. Draw the breath in halfway and begin as you begin. Explore extending your fingers, radiating out to your heart, to your fingertips, and keep it going. And draw in as much breath as you can. You could gaze forward if you like, or up to your thumbs and rooting down, bring in more breath, stretching to the sky through your fingertips. And more breath. Reaching for the sky, drawing even more breath. And exhale slowly your palms. Recenter to your heart. And simply releasing your hands down just for a moment. Swivel around and lie down onto your back for just a brief moment, like a minute or so of Shavasana. If you'd like, stay for a lot much longer. You can also conclude your practice here. Let go. Allowing that energy to more naturally diffuse all through you, to soak in down into your toes, your fingertips. Let everything settle, a sense of surrendering to the earth. And stretching out, and really stretching out You could roll up or to your side and come back around to sitting in a comfortable cross-leg or other position. You could be in a chair if you'd like. And as you sit now, comfortably as you can, you might have your palms down. You might find that a more calming mudra or yana mudra, a little more opening mudra. And here we are. Now again, let your eyes either rest lightly closed or your gaze focus on something nearby. Come back for a moment to natural breathing and then to Ujjayi breathing, just through your nose, Ujjayi breath. Exploring Nadi, shodhana, Pranayama, alternate nostril breathing. If you want a lot of the theory on this, read chapter 8 of my book, Teaching Yoga. It's titled Teaching Pranayama, or I think it's chapter 23 or something in my yoga therapy book. Similar chapters, so largely an edit of that Teaching Yoga chapter. A lot more information though, guiding all of these practices, the sort of theory and techniques behind all of this. So here, with your right hand spreading wide open, bring the tips of your index and middle fingers to the base of your thumb. So your ring and pinky fingers are out there. Bring the tips of those together like that. Then bring your right fingertips and thumb tips, the sides of your nose, all the way by the bridge of your nose, and then slide them about halfway down, feeling there for where the cartilage gives way to simple soft tissue. Then, with your finger and thumb tips in contact with the skin, maintaining that contact, but with your nostrils wide open, take a couple of cycles of Ujjayi. Smooth and balanced, comfortable as can be with the breath. And when you next exhale the breath out all the way, press your right nostril firmly closed and ease the breath in through your left nostril. And when filled with breath, press it closed and open the right, easing the breath out through the right nostril. Back in through the right, closing it and out through the left. Back in the left. Close it and out through the right. And as you continue with this, play with a sense of visualization as the breath flows in that right nostril, so it's feeding across into the left hemisphere of your brain, and that natural pause filled with breath, it's looping up and over where it flows out from your right hemisphere through your left nostril. Back in the left, it feeds into the right hemisphere. Up and over, it loops and flows out through the right. Visualizing this, perhaps sort of sensing it. Stay with it. A sense of sort of touching your brain, if you will, with the breath. And as you stay with this, with an Ujjayi quality in the breath, balanced breathing, the length of the inhalations and exhalations is the same, Shama vritti. Staying in it a few more cycles. Calming, soothing. If it's difficult to draw the breath or release the breath through one or the other nostril, sort of cheat a little bit, allowing it to flow through the other one, and get into that neti pot practice. To keep those nasal passages free as can be. And after you next complete the exhalation through your left nostril, simply release your hand down. Natural breathing. No Ujjayi, no technique. Just be in it for a moment. Feel what you're feeling. With Nadi shodhana, that alternate nostril breathing, you can bring in a whole wide array of permutations, all the techniques we did, the vritti practice, the Viloma practices, the Kapalabhati practices, one nostril at a time. Take your time, consider taking a look at the Teaching Yoga chapter 8 of Teaching Yoga. to get insight into this. It's all drawn largely from the Hatha Yoga Pradipika, Swami Swapmarama, early 15th century Hatha Yoga Pradipika, guidance on these practices, also light on pranayama from B.K.S. Iyengar, primary sources I recommend checking out. So from here now, just for a moment, if you'd like, simply sit and be in it. You could, of course, pause this video, stay in that Nadi shodhana practice, explore those permutations, and then come back here and simply sit for a moment. And as you're here in it, whether your eyes are resting lightly closed or your gaze is focused somewhere, imagine the breath flowing as though right through the middle of your chest, through your heart. Visualize that. Play with the feeling of breathing right into your heart. And play with, as you exhale, a sense of the breath as though flowing out behind you like the wake of a boat. The breath flows in, spaciousness and openness. The breath flows out, a sense of letting go of whatever you might not need to hold on to or that you might wish to let go of. Breathing in fully, deeply into that infinitely spacious love in your heart. The breath flows out, conditioned by that incredible heart, your heart. The breath flows out, releasing tension, releasing anything that stands in the way of your life, your joy, your contentment. Something troubling you, something that's really with you. Play with visualizing it like a word, like an image. Breathe whatever is most with you deeply into your heart. Are you afraid of something? Are you hurting in some way? Is it something that's really joyful that you want to expand? Breathe it into your heart, into that infinitely spacious love in your heart. And as your breath flows out, there goes anything that stands in the way. Play with this. Thank you for sharing in these practices. I wish you a beautiful further experience with this, with your life, with all that's happening for you in the world today. Namaste.